Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Um, I hope tonight, even though we do encourage you to use the chat, if you feel comfortable with that, and we say please mute. If you want to just ask a question out loud, I think it's fine. I like to hear your voice, and I like your ideas and your feedback. So if I forget to ask, what do you think about this? Then definitely jump in if you have something to add or question or anything like that. But definitely you have experience that I don't have. So that's great to make it part of our club. I owe this presentation to the president of the Fruit Club, or probably the board of the Fruit Club, which I'll tell you about in a little while, because they're the ones who asked me to do it. I was voluntold, in fact. I was told, Carol, you're doing this. So that was great to do that. And Bainbridge Prepares is the originator of this series anyway. And climate change is definitely a resilience challenge to us. So it's very appropriate that we present it here as well. So we're looking at the following things. Let's see if I can get this to move. There we go. Tonight we're going to look at the difference between climate cycles, because our climate cycles all the time, versus climate change, basically. What's going to happen specifically, what we anticipate to happen on Bainbridge, how that's going to challenge our food plants, and then how we can help our gardens thrive in those conditions. And we're going to get some tools and resources. I always have a tools and resources page. There's a link in the chat now to the resources page. So I might say a lot in this presentation. That's on the resources page. And maybe you're one of those brains that needs to sort of mentally doodle while you're listening to someone. You can click around on that page so you can get that resource right now if you want to. So here we're talking about, first, just a little clarification, climate change versus climate cycles. So La Nina and El Nino, we're familiar with that, and that does influence our temperatures, but there are actually longer cycles that take decades to complete that we're still experiencing. So one of them is in the bottom picture. It looks like La Nina and El Nino, but it's called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. It takes a really long time. So these things make our temperatures go up, and then we might have a few years where your neighbor says, well, our high temps have been going down since that really big high year, or our winter temps are changing the following way. Therefore, there isn't any climate change. But that's not the way that works. So if you look at the graph, this is not actual data, it's just to show you. This is an oscillation, so this is cycling with no overall change in the average. But that's not what we're seeing. So temps go up, temps go down. But what we're seeing is this one, the black one. Temps certainly go up, and then average low winter temp or average high summer temp or whatever is going down. But the average is on an incline. So it never goes as low as it used to, and it goes higher than it used to. So this red line is climate change. So that's what we're talking about. I'm going to talk about RCP 8.5 and RCP 4.5, which sounds like that's going to be too technical. But RCP 4.5 is the projection for our temperatures, the range of temperatures, if we get our act together and reduce climate emissions acceleration, climate emissions increase. So that requires maybe international and national and international action. But the green area is if we do that. 8.5 includes part of the green area. I don't know if you can see, but it's sort of shadowed under the green area, but it goes up much higher. So it's the top of the green. You can see right here. This is RCP 8.5. That's if we continue doing what we're doing now. So that becomes relevant because I have some tools to show you, and you can set the tools for RCP 8.5 with higher emissions, which result in higher temps, as you can see, or RCP 4.5. So you get to use those tools. So what about Bainbridge specifically? Of course, warmer in the summer and the winter by a few degrees. But it says drier and wetter on this list. So drier means drier when it's supposed to be drier, which is in the summer. If you talk to old timers, or you maybe have been here for quite a while, you'll remember that it used to rain in the summer periodically. And we don't get much of that anymore. We get less of it. So the drier periods are drier, and the wetter periods are wetter. Not double the rainfall, but there's going to be an increase in rainfall. And the models are very sophisticated. There's a lot of data. They're verified by multiple models predicting similar outcomes. So we can't predict exactly what's going to happen like every year, but we can definitely predict those trends. We can also have more extremes. So an example of that would be winds. So the energy of our weather all of it basically comes from just small temperature differences. So that's what causes winds ultimately, and all kinds of weather. So when you have small temperature differences, like a little increase in temperatures in the oceans and the air, that drives the system harder. So we could have winds, and that's relevant if you have dwarf fruit trees, for example, or maybe even big fruit trees, and they've been standing the high winds recently, but if the winds get higher, that can be a problem. And sort of an upside, I guess you could say, is that we'll have a longer and warmer growing season. So for, tomato growers, that's good news. The fir trees don't like that. So they need that cool, moist spring. They rely on that. So it's a challenge. And yeah, there can be some upside to it in the short term. But we also have the challenge of being resilient in that. So first I'm going to show you some interesting tools that you have. This is called the Climate Toolbox. It is created by a bunch of really smart people who have been doing a lot of working together, a lot of research, and a lot of very dedicated work to give us these tools. So it is used by firefighters, emergency planners, farm organizations, all kinds of stuff. It is massive. When you do go to the Climate Toolbox, when you start clicking around, you'll see that it gives you a pop-up that says, do you want to see a video about how it works? Would you rather have a quick tour? Do you want something in print instead? Do you want an example? So it's trying to make it really usable for you. So it does lead you through it, even though there's just massive amounts of information. One of the things that you can do on the Climate Toolbox, I'm going to show you now. This is a static page where I've already set things up, so I don't get to click around. But I've chosen climate adaptation and mitigation opportunities. I wish it were catchier for us home gardeners, but that's what is the best for their main audience. So I've picked Washington. I chose King County because King has enough agriculture still going in it that it's on this page. Kitsap isn't on here, but it'll be close enough. And I've decided on lower emissions as my my option. And I want to see for myself what's going to happen around like 2050. And this is kind of centered around 2050, the middle of the coming century, I guess, this century. So I'm asking it, what is King County going to be like? Is there anywhere that I know that is like this? Is it going to be like Tacoma? Or is it going to be like Forks? Is it going to get really rainy? Or is it going to be like somewhere in Arizona? I don't know. So what this has done for me is it picks in red counties that are now having the weather that we can expect to have. So if you've been into the area that's in red, then you can say, oh, that's drier, that gets hotter. And I can kind of feel that. I can understand what those growing conditions will be like. Um, and then down below, they show you what they grow there and what the counties are. And you can, it's kind of interesting to look at. And the gray ones are kind of secondarily not as good matches. Um, yeah. So this is an interesting little tool to be able to use. There's another one also, which is crop suitability. So let's see if I have the whole thing. Nope. Let's see. I'm going to go to the climate toolbox and see if I can get it. Okay, here's crop suitability, and this one actually is live. So I am trying to see what I can grow here. Like, let's say I want to know if I can grow Chardonnay grapes. So see, I have chosen grapes. It's a little drop down. You can do a few things. And you're seeing almonds in this list. Garden centers are already selling almond trees. And I'm going to look at the changes in our climate. So here's the historic period. This is in the past. And you can see this is where Chardonnay grapes were able to grow from 71 to 2000. And over on the right-hand side, it says they are cold hardy enough. They get enough chill. They don't get enough heat. So their overall suitability is low. And this graph is actually, if you grow them for 10 years, see how it says 10 years, 10 down here? In how many years of those 10 will you get a crop? And here they're saying, you're really not going to get a crop on Chardonnay. It's not hot enough. But let's look at 2010 to 2039 period. And of course, that's not static. 2010 and 2039 are not the same, but it's kind of that change over that period. And we're going to see this one in a different color, better process. There we go. So what do you think of that? So you can see that we have increased our heat accumulation. And then we can look at the 2040 to 2069 period and look how it changes on the map. So that you can see that's really a climatic change. And almost 9 years out of 10, you'll be able to grow Chardonnay grapes here. So I'm not saying you want to grow Chardonnay grapes, but it gives you a sort of a feel. And some people like to use this tool. Not that you're going to predict things necessarily, year by year, but it helps me get a feel for like what kinds of changes we're expecting. Let's talk about the challenges for us. I'm going to dump challenges on you. Challenges for your plants. Just don't hate the messenger on this one. It's just going to be some challenges we're going to have. And then we're going to talk about solutions. So first is abiotic. That means things that aren't alive. So of course, water, of course, winter winds. Our timing of things might change. If your family has always planted peas on Washington's birthday or President's Day, that might have to change, or you might be able to have that change. We might get a shorter bloom to pollination period. That means your first bloom comes out to how long can bees come and pollinate your trees before they dry up and they're not able to be pollinated anymore. That's more relevant to our overall economy, agriculture economy of the region, including the east side. So I'll talk about that a little bit in the future too. But we need to solve these problems using some of our skills, our gardening skills, and we can do it. There's also bud loss from breakthrough warmth. If we get a warm period quite early and things bloom and then this happens, that can cause us a problem. And this is actually the same set of trees. That little arm there and that one are right there and right there. And these were taken a week apart. So that is relevant to diversifying our orchards so that we can still have success even if we get some breakthrough warmth. So you might not be an orchardist, but maybe in a couple of years you want to grow a couple of trees. We can also get pests and diseases, bigger populations. Why? It's not as cold in the winter, so more of them survive. Then you have more adults at the beginning of the following year, and it's warmer, so they're cold blooded, so they can move faster and grow faster. And so they're able to have not only more generations because the warm period is longer, but they can also sort of do it faster, procreate faster. So that could create bigger populations of insects. We can have different insects and pathogens. Of course we can. We might actually have more of one thing, but less of others. Can you imagine if our falls remain warm, that we might get more ripe tomatoes without blights, without as many blights? But stressed plants are less resistant to diseases. So we're going to have to do something about that. And we do have some solutions for that in some ways to respond. Weeds, they could grow faster. And we might see new weeds. We already have these weeds here, but they may be more successful because especially these two are called C4 plants. And they're really good at growing in when it gets hot. When other plants like garden plants might like slow down and wilt because it's a little bit hot, these guys love it. They have extra superpowers. This is purslane down here. Purslane's edible. I know it's all over some of my friends' gardens already. It also produces per plant exactly an infinite number of seeds. So it is really good at spreading. So I would pull it out and eat it before. Make sure your ID is right and look up whether or not you really want to eat it, but it is something that people eat. Upside, of course, plant growth. Our plant growth can be quicker in the springs. Longer growing season, that means our last frost to first frost period is longer. Less summer rain disease, maybe. Our chill hours for fruits are still okay. So that's nice that it's not wrecking our fruit crops. We might be able to do different types of crops like Chardonnay grapes or almonds. Local heat stress here is not as bad as in places that are already hot. So that's kind of a sad relative position to be in, but I'm grateful for it, I suppose. And our food resilience is all the more important. I guess I wouldn't say that's the upside, but it is an effect. And that leads me to want to talk a little bit about our regional food economies. So if we imagine that places that already have a challenge irrigating are getting hotter, so California, inland Washington, inland Oregon already rely a lot and on irrigation. And the east side, I was listening to a webinar and a guy was talking about the east side. He was saying his farmers that he works with. Sorry, I have to get rid of my phone because it's still disturbing me. The farmers that he works with are concerned because their reservoir system relies on snowpack melting fairly slowly. And if it melts really fast, they're going to have to decide if they're going to catch that by creating bigger reservoirs. Like that's expensive, right? He also said that there's a pollination window that's getting shorter and shorter. And recently the pollination window from king bloom, that's the first flower that comes out on an apple tree, to too dry for pollination was 7 days recently. Not this year, but a couple of years ago. So those are challenges, heat stress, and even fire and smoke right now is influencing hay crops because smoke holds humidity near the ground and it's not drying out as easily. So that's challenging farmers. So when we look at the regional food economy, when it's under stress and things are getting more expensive, that can be, inconvenient for some of us, but really, really important for others. So the stronger that we make our communities, um, in our town and in our whole county and anywhere that we can help to strengthen, um, the better off we are. And we can do that in groups. We can certainly do it individually, but we can do that in groups. And the founder of Bainbridge Prepares um, said in a blog that he regards like water catchment and growing your own food and things like this. Scott James is his name, as freedom. So I think it's important that you're looking into this and thinking about it. So, how can we help? What do we do? What can we do to help our gardens stay adaptable? I'll preface this by saying I, as much as anybody, want that one weird trick or that thing I can purchase that will, make me feel like I'm more fortified and better at it. But it really is stuff that you already know to do. But I'm going to connect it to climate change because when I'm doing something, if it has more meaning for me, I'm more motivated. I'm more motivated to do it on time. It's more satisfying because I know what I'm doing. Like if I'm told to mulch, why? Why am I mulching? Is it just because I don't want to water twice a week? So let's take a look at it. So one thing we can do is diversify. Not only growing, if you grow apples or you grow tomatoes, then try growing some plums or fruit or something like that. But even within your tomato crop, you can diversify because different plants have different resistances. And you might think, well, you have to diversify, in your own garden, and you certainly can, but you don't have to grow 300 different things. We can do this as a group. We can do this in the following way. Like in the past year, I have shared an heirloom squash, cut it up into chunks and shared it with people. And a couple of them said, what is that? I want to grow it. Then I turned them on to the supplier for this heirloom seed and they grew it. And then my seed crop didn't work this year. So I said, hey, do you have some seed? And they said, yeah, but you have to start the plants for me. So I did. And we're passing these things back and forth and supporting each other just informally by like hanging out in each other's gardens. I did that with some tomatoes. Same thing. We now have that tomato that I got from somebody in Port Orchard that's quite successful here is in a few gardens here. And I have a couple of things like that. So you certainly can do that in your garden, which is fun, but you can also do it sort of socially. And being here is part of that and making friends. You don't have to do it just with things that grow like fruit trees, which are kind of a big investment, you might say, of time and money. This lettuce is resistant to lettuce root aphids. They are aphids that actually attack the roots of your plant. This isn't fungus in here. It's not stringy. It's sort of like dust. And you may have this now and not know it. If your lettuce is really getting water and it's not dried out, but it sort of isn't growing very fast and it looks like it's dried out a little bit, you might have these guys. So take a shovel and scoop them out and see if you've got them. This Segolene is resistant to them. So in August and September, that is a smart thing for me to plant this kind. I also planted several kinds, and I also discovered another one that I think is resistant that is not listed as resistant. So just the fact that I planted a lot of different kinds of lettuce helps me see what's up, what's working best in our current conditions. So that even changes. Like in the spring, Segolene might not be so good, but in September it's good. So that kind of diversity is what's going to let us change crops if we need to. We know about that, right? Like globally, we like diversity, genetic diversity. Does anybody have a story or anything of, do you grow a lot of different kinds of things? John McInnes, you grow a lot of tomatoes, right?
Yes.
And you have figured out which ones work currently in our climate, right?
Yes, I have about probably about eight, and I haven't always stretched it a little bit every year with another variety or two. But yeah, I've quite. I tried. I agree with having diverse types, and then I stretch it a little bit every year with another variety or two. But yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so you're not growing 90 kinds. Even if you had two and you tried a new different one every year, that still is useful. Okay,
Hmm.
cool. Thanks, John. Let's see. Oh, John Fawcett, thank you. I think that's John Fawcett who gave us a link about purslane and the health benefits. If somebody finds out that it's high in omega threes, I think that's what I think of what I read.
Antioxidants, whole bunch of stuff. Supposed to be good if you have diabetes. It helps with blood sugar, whole
And
bunch
it's
of things.
kind of succulent, so it's kind of fun. People also will saute it lightly and put it in eggs, scrambled eggs. Um, if you're a fruit grower and you sort of struggle to get out there and do the pruning at the right time, and you know you should, you know what they say, the right time to prune is when you're finally out there with the pruners. So really I wouldn't want to get on your case when you do prune, but it can be a little bit motivating to think about how we want to reduce stress for those extra hot years, for we want to have the strongest fruit trees and fruit plants that we can. And we want to reduce disease, help them heal quickly and easily, and not have them waste growth. So if I clip a branch that I know I don't want because it's growing right into the fence, if I clip it when it's little and I clip it when I should, that plant is going to have a spring growth spurt and then it can cover it up really fast. And it did just a pinky's worth of damage. If I wait until that branch, of course, is the size of my forearm, then it might maybe still should come off, right? We always do repair on our trees and stuff like that. That's not to say if you have an old tree that you shouldn't repair it. Um, but if I had the choice, I would do it earlier. So that's what our city arborist, I was talking to her about this, and she said, really, to be nice to your fruit trees is that's what you're doing. You're making them, it's not just a chore for you, so it's not so crowded. You're actually making them more resilient in whatever comes their way.
Hey, Carol, quick question
Yeah.
about that. What about, let's just say you did a hack job on all your fruit trees and you don't go to the to the fruit tree club because you're a monster and you kill your
Yeah.
trees. And now you have 5,000 suckers coming up. Do you have any thoughts on how to get rid of suckers?
I do not know how to get rid of suckers. So what I have done when I had to kill holly is I just kept them. I would let them grow and cut them off, let them grow and cut them off. But I don't know. Does anybody else? This is a club for encouraging plants, but we also sometimes need to know how to kill plants off. Has anybody successfully killed their dang trees?
Uh,
As far as suckers go, suckers quite often is dependent on the rootstock.
Yeah.
So some rootstocks sucker much more than others. I have one that I grafted 2 years ago that I have still in a pot that I haven't put in the ground yet, and it's got I don't know, five or six suckers coming off it. But depends, kind of depends on how deep the rootstock is planted and the variety, most important, of the rootstock. Some don't
Yeah.
sucker at all, and some sucker a lot.
So she's already cut these trees down. Is that right, Debbie?
well,
You just trimmed them hard.
the trees are actually, we gave them they were way too big.
Yeah.
So we gave them a really hard prune, all of them. And there's apples and there's plums and there's pears. And it's specifically the plum that the new growth that's
Oh,
coming out on the tree is good, but there's 5 million suckers everywhere now.
yeah. Have you
And
heard the phrase plum thicket? I mean,
Hmm.
those words go together because plums do that.
Oh,
But I wonder if you would want to email me and I'll maybe I you might want to ask Fruit Club. Are you feeling like you're the worst Fruit Club member anyway ever and you don't want to go or you
no, I just haven't made it.
Oh
I just
yeah.
haven't gone, but I
Yeah.
clearly I need to.
You might. because they did a major hack job on some trees that, they'll do it on antiques, and the club will actually
Oh.
do it on really, like on Johnson Farm. They
Mhm.
did some major stuff, and you can graft onto those trees as well if you're interested. So we're having a fruit tour with the president of Fruit Club, and you will not be worse Fruit Club member than I am. I have publicly declared myself every time I'm at Fruit Club. I introduce myself as Fruit Club's worst member. I am terrible. So I win, and you're coming in second. But you might want to come to that tour. The link, it's on the 27th at 5, and it's in person, and it is amazing. So I guess you could go and feel intimidated, or you could go and just,
Go ask questions.
help you just confess, I've done a terrible thing. And he'll say, oh, probably not. You should look at the things on Johnson Farm. They just had huge limbs lopped off. Because sometimes it's necessary, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyway, you've got a backyard fruit club. I bet wherever you live, there is one. It's all part of the Western Cascade Fruit Society, but you can find them in different places. So those links that I'm showing right now are in the resource page. And you do not have to be a good fruit grower. When you go, you'll realize that people are showing up. Some of them have orchards and they're really into grafting and all sorts of stuff. And some people have some strawberries and a plum tree, and that's it. And I started going to fruit. Well, I joined Fruit Club. I rarely make it, honestly, to the meetings because I do other things on Fridays for people, Thursdays. But I didn't even own any fruit trees. I was just messing with my neighbor's fruit trees when I joined. So you do not have to be good at it. That's why you're there. Okay, the next thing you can do is scout. It is an actual technique. It's actually called scouting. It's part of what's called integrated pest management, and farmers do it so that they don't have to use so many pesticides, and they can stay ahead of problems, and they don't have to spend so much money and all kinds of stuff. So this is an actual thing that they train people in. And I've mentioned it before, just know what your plants look like. If you really want to go out there and study them, you can. Or if you just are present and, when you're out there walking around, or you're enjoying your garden, or you're watering, you can just look at things, and you get used to the fact that this tree appears to have cracks in its bark all the time ever since it was a baby, but they're not really cracks. So you don't have to, you don't have to freak out about it. But if you see a change, then you know that something's going on. It just doesn't quite look right. Is that part of its natural development, or is it a problem? You also know what insects and little spots and things like that are around, and what is the threshold, because we're going to have organisms in our garden and in our gardens, and they don't always cause enough of a problem to warrant action. So, like for right now, I always grow a ton of nasturtiums, and I just totally let them take over a large portion of my garden this year. And they always get black aphids, and then they collapse. That's just part of how it works. So then other things grow up and sort of replace them. So that doesn't actually cause me a problem. They don't get on my other, like my vegetable plants or anything like that. And I think you might have seen me talk about like how many slug holes or too many slug holes in something. So scouting is important. Why, in reference to climate, is we can say that there probably will be changes of organisms, but we don't know what they are. Yeah, we don't know, these complex organism interactions of predators and prey and conditions, and we might find new pests coming our way. So there is something relevant to that I'll show you in a little while. We can also watch our plants for timing clues instead of using, the calendar that we sort of inherited in our minds from 100 years ago. When I was a little kid, I read in Laura Ingalls Wilder that you should plant your grain when willow leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear. And I thought, oh, that's so silly. They didn't have science, but they did, because it turns out um, the willow leaves start growing when the soil temps are at a certain level, and they don't do it before that. So that is a thermometer that tells you whether or not the soil is warm enough. So here are some of the timing clues that people use now. Pruning roses at forsythia bud break. I do not currently have roses, but somebody told me that that's what people do. I do side dress my overwintered brassicas and garlic using crocus bloom and daffodil bloom time. Some people give them nitrogen at crocus bloom, sorry, and then AP fertilizer daffodil bloom. I just give mine nitrogen somewhere between crocus and daffodil, because I'm pretty sure my soil has plenty of phosphorus and potassium in it. So I don't want to add any more to that, because I fertilize them in the fall as well. This third point, first nitrogen onto blueberries at 10 to 15% bud break, is an actual thing that farmers use. If you're going to use organic stuff on your blueberries, like blood meal is quite something that blueberries like. You want to go 2 weeks earlier. So that's kind of like the first sign of any motion on your flowers, I guess. And there's another thing that we always do is thin and apply socks to your apples before they're the size of ping pong balls. The socks are little tiny pads that people who try on fancy shoes, they're like teeny tiny nylons that you slide on your foot. They are actually those things, and they keep codling moth and apple maggot out. So you thin your tree, and you might think you're getting rid of all your apples, but you're not. You just want to have, you don't want to have bunches of apples. So you take all but one off for each bunch. But you do need to put them on before they're the size of ping pong balls, because, well before, because otherwise they might be occupied by apple maggot. Does anybody else have a timing clue?
I don't know if it'd be a timing clue, but on the codling moth things, I've been grafting late variety apples, because the latest variety apples are not bothered by codling moths.
Wow, yeah.
And the codling moth, and the theory from an orchardist that I was told was that the apples are still small and green, and the codling moth can't deal with that, or decides to pass it on to a earlier ripening one. So it's kind of a timing thing, but kind of works for me.
It's a diversity thing too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, and if you have early blooming fruit trees and later blooming fruit trees of the same variety, like if an early apple and a late apple, of course they have to have pollinators that are blooming at the same time.
Yeah, that's the other challenge. I got a couple of scions from the Bremerton Fruit Club, the Peninsula Fruit Club, which I think you said was Kitsap Fruit Club, of a,
Right.
I want to say it's a
Peninsula,
Hauer apple, and it's supposed to be called a Christmas apple. And I've grafted it this year, and I have 2 of them growing, but I know I'm kind of worried about pollination of those 2, but we'll see how that goes.
Maybe a neighbor has one. I mean, something late. But it's nice to have early stuff and late stuff, because you might have an early storm that wipes out the bloom on the early ones. Or there might be a year when there's no storm, but the later ones dry up really fast because something, gets really hot. So that kind of diversity is nice to have too.
Well, and what I'm planning, this is up in Collin County. A lot of what I'm planning is for the deer and elk too. So I have the yellow transparency with their early apple, and then these Hauer apples, which are Christmas apples. So I'm trying to provide not only for ourselves, but for the deer and the elk for their
I dream of a very
season.
late. Oh, sorry. For the deer and the elk. Cool. I dream of a very late ripening apple, because it seems like everything comes off the trees right when I'm trying to deal with tomatoes. So late sounds good to me. Something else we can do that is really relevant to climate change to keep our plants more adapted, more resilient, is to help your soil ecosystem do what it evolved to do. So the little plant on the right looks like it has big roots, but those aren't roots. That's a fungus. The plant has a relationship with the fungus, and they are feeding each other. And the fungus reduces drought resistant. I mean, it increases drought resistance and improves nutrient availability and helps, definitely retains moisture. Bacteria do this on a lot of vegetable crops. They coat the roots, and it is not bad. It is good. So how can we help them do that? I'll talk a little bit about that tonight, but if you had not seen, or you need to see again, the soil session from Veg Club, there is a Zoom link on the resource page for this, so you can look at the recording. So it's a Veg Club session just like this, but it's specifically all about what's going on in your soil and how to encourage it. So you also have book options. Building Soil is a basic one about how to encourage your ecosystem in your soil. The Holistic Orchard is specifically for fruit trees, and it's emphasizes soils. It has sections on soils. If you want to go into a little bit better understanding of both fungus and bacteria in the soil and how you can get them to work with you and for you and how you can support them, that's this one. And then after, there actually is fungus is covered in this. It's just all about the soil food web. But then there's one that's specifically written by the same person that's about fungus, because fruit trees and nut trees often have relationships with fungi more, and gardens like more bacterially dominated soil, but there's still fungus in there. So yeah.
Debbie had a question about carrots.
Oh, what's up, Debbie? Let's see. When can you take the tents off your carrots? Never. I would keep them on until it's super cold. I once looked up the carrot rust fly populations graph for west of the Cascades, and it was still high in November, depending on the temperature. So is that bad news? You'd love to just uncover them. Well, if they're ripe, if they're big, you would be tempting fate, but if they're big, you could take them off and eat them. But if you want them to stay through the winter, then you probably should leave it on.
Can you shear the tops of the carrots?
They would grow back and they would take energy out of the carrot, some food out of the carrot. Why would you shear them?
Oh, they're reaching. I've put in raised beds and I have domes over the top of them. They're all kind of topped out right now.
Mm-hmm. I suppose
So
you could. If you do that, it emits smell and it attracts the flies. So if you're covering them, then you might want to cover it up right away.
Yeah, I'm not talking about shearing down to the carrot root, just kind of shearing the tops 3 or 4
not
inches.
A clean shave. Yeah. Okay. Debbie says she's going to tough it out. I know, Debbie, that's the thing. I don't have a garden, so I can look at plastic and tissue paper looking stuff. But if you want to eat them now, you can take them off. But if you planted them specifically for winter, I would leave it. Okay. So one thing that we can do, although you still should look at the video, I'm just going to give you a couple of things. One is to compost your veg beds, not 5 inches of compost every year, but if you have a well-developed garden already and it's had compost regularly, like I put in a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of compost in my beds every year. It's not very much compost. That's because my beds already have a good amount of food in them. The left is just 5% organic matter, so basically compost. That's not very much. But on the right-hand side, it's 1%. So we sometimes think if we're just putting fertilizer in that we're feeding our beds. but compost provides the actual like carbohydrates for the soil ecosystem, for the bugs and the bacteria and the fungus. I'm glad your crop was successful, Debbie, your carrots. Mulch. Mulch hides and protects that soil ecosystem because otherwise it goes dry 3 inches down, wet, dry 3 inches down, wet. And that influences the temperatures below it, right? So we do love to mulch when appropriate. I have a ton of mulch in my garden, but not everything's mulched because I ran out of mulch, frankly. But some things I don't mulch, like baby lettuces in the spring. I don't mulch those, and then when they get bigger and they need the cooling effect of the mulch, and things start to dry up, and I want to maintain the soil for the microorganisms, then I mulch them. But some things get mulched from the very beginning. For vegetable beds, unless you're doing permaculture, which is a different class, we like things that are not woody. So we like leaves. Some people use straw, but you can get like wheat and oats growing out of the straw and you have to go buy it. But there's so many leaves around and they're nutritive for the soil. So putting on a good thick layer of leaves is quite useful in your beds. You're protecting that ecosystem so that more organisms can grow in it. For fruit trees, we use ramial chip, also known as arborist chip. It's in the lower right corner. See how much green stuff is in there? See that it is not like hog fuel or just chewed up wood, and it's not bark. So the great thing about arborist chips is it's a lot of small branches. Those branches have a lot of sugars in them. They don't have a lot of bark. They have a lot of cambium and juicy green coatings on them and leaves. So we love that. That is a lot of food. And then when we put the mulch in, we don't do an inch and then, weeds come up and we say it never did anything. It's a lot of mulch. People recommend a lot of mulch around fruit trees. Some people object to ramial chip around fruit trees because the fruit trees will sometimes put their roots up into the mulch as it decomposes. And then when that mulch dries in the summer, the fruit tree roots are cut off by the tree and they just die. But it's not all the roots on the tree. And those are opportunistic roots that are coming up. Some people disagree with me, but I have some experts to tell you more about this. I'm going to give it to you. So they come up and they use the resource, and when the resource is no longer available, they sometimes will kill their roots off. But it's just a little bit of their total root mass. So I think if you say this in a fruit club, some people will say, nope, mulch is bad for fruit trees. So my answer is, this is the general picture of what you're supporting. Let's see if I have her. My answer is this lady. Her name is Linda Chalker Scott. She's got a PhD in making plants work. She's written really cool books too. And you can see down here, she talks about kinds of mulch. And she just has so much information. She's written a great book called How Plants Work. If you like to know about what's going on in the soil and it's not hard chemistry. I mean, hard chemistry is fun. I do it all the time. I tutor that, but it's really just this molecule needs this. Doesn't work if the pH is too high. That's why you want to keep your pH low. Or, it doesn't like oxygen. So that's why we mulch. And it's very, very, you don't have to look stuff up. You just have to read it and it makes sense, I think. Anyway, I think she's great. Yeah, so mulching definitely decreases water use. You can also, this should have been up with scouting. You can know who's out there. So this is part of scouting. Say you found something and you took this disease to your local nursery. And if you have a disease that looks like a leaf thing that might be bacterial or fungal, please put it in a Ziploc bag and tell them that you understand that, of course, they're not going to want to take it out of the Ziploc bag because you're at a nursery and you don't want to spread it around. Sometimes they do anyway. But if you have something that they can't figure out, or they say, looks like some kind of fungus, but I don't know, you can call or look up the Washington State University Plant Pathology Lab. It's linked on the resource page. And this disease is called basal downy mildew, and it did not exist. I thought basal downy mildew does not exist. I've never heard of it. And I asked gardeners all over the island, and they said, "Yeah, my basil's doing something weird. It's just not succeeding." So I called the Path Lab and I said, "Is there such thing as basal downy mildew?" And they said, "Wow, yes, yes, send it to us. We're very excited. It's new, and we want some of it." You know, they're supposed to be monitoring where it is, so they want to make sure that if I say I have it, that we have it. But they have a form you can fill out, and you send in some of your material. It tells you how to do it, and you can find out if you have something new or something even that you can't figure out. Like I've sent them an insect once I didn't, or some damage, and I didn't know what was causing it. And they will figure it out for you. It's primarily for farmers, but it's also for home growers. So that's pretty cool. Also, if this happens to your basil, I don't have this on the list, so you're going to want a pencil. If this happens to your basil, there's a resistant kind, and you can get it from Johnny's, and it's called Prospera. And there are lots of kinds of Prospera basil, but they have been developed by Rutgers University so that they just charge right through and they are not susceptible to basal downy mildew. So knowing who's out there is important in terms of climate change, because when we see changes, then we can adapt to them. And we can know whether or not, we can figure out what's happening. The next thing is that we love to support pollinators, right? But I need a control. I need some pesticide, right? Or I need some herbicide or whatever it is. Let's say I need an antibacterial thing for this, or I need pesticides to kill pest insects that are eating up my plants. This is what I want. I want something that controls multiple pests. I want it to respond when my pest populations get high. Even if I don't know that my pest populations are high, I would like it to be in charge of itself, this chemical, and I would like it to just work harder when my pest populations go up. I do not want to reapply it after a rain, which is always around here. I don't want it to poison anybody, not even anything, my plants, my soil, my dog, my family. And gosh, I'd like it if it applied itself. That would be great, right? That does exist. I would like to challenge you for a second. See these guys? You may remember them. Which of these are eating my plants or could eat my plants? And which of these insects eat the insects that eat my plants? And of course, the answer is that none of these eat my plants, and all of them eat the insects that eat my plants, or eat some plants. So there is this army waiting to help you. And we have a good way to get to know them. If you missed or need to take a look again at this army of animals waiting to help you, insects that are waiting to help you. By the way, they don't hurt you unless, I suppose, if you grabbed a centipede and you squeezed it, of course, that would do something. But these guys are not interested in harming you at all. That, if you squeezed it, they might do something. This is a fly, it's not a bee, right? So they just leave you alone, and they do all of these things. When they prey on pest populations that are low enough that you can't know that they're there, and they will prey on them. But if the pest population gets really high, they will come to that pest population and prey on it, and sometimes lay their babies all over it so that the babies eat the pest population. So I decided after I gave the talk this year, which is the third time I've given it, that I wasn't walking the walk enough. So I let some parsnips go to seed and I made sure that I didn't pull my parsley out until it was really done blooming, and all these just a few easy things. And what happens is you get these blooms that these guys particularly like. And I had so many really cool bugs, and they really helped me. I had dill that got aphids all over it, and then in came the ladybugs, and I thought, oh, that's not really going to do anything. That's just going to be cute. No more aphids. So it takes a while sometimes, but right now I'm getting dill for dill pickles that I wouldn't otherwise have had. So there are details about them, and it's pretty darn cool if I do say so myself. So this is in the chat, and you can get hold of the link right in the chat for this. And it's pretty. It's mostly growing flowers and not getting rid of your leaf fall. Don't put the leaves in the green waste. That's not all, but it's just nice. It's just pleasant. Sometimes just letting herbs go to seed and things like that. But these guys like particular kinds of plants. They're not hard to find, these plants. You probably already have them, but it's also not another project that you have to do, but it is very purposeful, and it's really lovely. And excuse me, of course, we also want to support our pollinators. So when we put plants in our gardens that support pollinators that bees like to come to, we have hundreds of kinds of native bees and syrphid flies, which look like bees, and all kinds of creatures that are coming to help us pollinate. And so they will help pollinate our fruit trees, which is important when climate is changing. Should we talk irrigation? Did anybody before we go into irrigation, did anybody see any of their predatory insects this year? Did you see anything show up from this margin here?
I saw 4 golden diggers at one time this year. I've never seen any more than one at a time, and they were all I had about 6 to 8 onions that I planted last year that I never harvested, so they were all in bloom, the big onion blooms.
Yes.
And they were acting like hummingbirds.
Wow.
In other words, they were chasing each other off the blooms. It was amazing to see. I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Don't they look like they're going to get you, right? But they don't.
Yeah, but I recognize them, and then partly
for sure.
from
You mentioned it before.
Yeah, from last year and whatnot. But I've never seen. I forget which herb it was that I've seen on before. But with the onion blooms, they were all over those, as well as other bees. But it was amazing to see. Yeah, they acted like one would chase them off the bloom, and then land on another bloom, and off another bloom, and amazing to see.
Cool. Yeah, that's neat. Last time you said oregano, and that's where I see a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's if you're thinking, oh, I've already heard it, plant more flowers in my garden, I don't need to see video. I would watch it because it's particular. These guys need particular shapes of flowers because they can't get food from tubular flowers for reasons you'll hear about in the video. But I loved looking at the flowers that I left for them this year. And by leaving, I really mean it's mostly leaving. It's just not pruning things back as early as I might have done. I just saw so many we have these bees that are like 3 millimeters long, and little wasps and things. The wasp, I guess, are the really short ones. But just everything that you might think, oh, that's the thing that's going to sting me, is probably one of our native non-honeybee, not attacking you en masse, native bees or other insects. They're really neat. I love it. I love a bug zoo. Anybody else have anything else to say about insects? Oh, if you want pollinators and you want mason bees and leafcutter bees, John Fawcett, you could put the info for mason bees and leafcutter bees in, couldn't you? Bet you could.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. I didn't do it this year.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's talk irrigation, shall we? I know John McInnes last time showed us his raised beds that had irrigation in them, mulching is going to help you save water tremendously. But if you do want to do drip irrigation, it helps with keeping the foliage dry on potatoes, garlic. Sometimes we'll get rust. So it helps keep your foliage dry there. What else do I like it for? Strawberries. I want to do drip into a strawberry bed and not do overhead watering because it causes the fruit to rot more. Sitting wet does. So you can do it for selected beds, or maybe you want to set up drip for your whole garden because you want to save water and make your watering more efficient. And this isn't, the picture that I'm showing is not a recommendation that you do your beds this way. I just want to show how easy it is. All of these parts basically go together with your fingers. You don't have to use a big deep trench and PVC and toxic purple glue and hire people who know, what they're doing. You can pretty easily, very easily set up a simple system. In this case, usually people, instead of sort of green garden hose, they usually use black plastic that is the similar material to these fittings. And it usually goes here and across here. And also, usually you would bury this under your footpath mulch. So I just want to point out that, can you see this is kind of like Tinker Toys? And you need to create the system. You need one punch tool, which is really simple. I mean, it's a specific tool, and a pair of pruners. And then beyond that, you're just screwing things together. And on the resource page, I have a link to Drip Depot. I'm not saying they're, the only place you could go. They do seem to be a bunch of irrigation nerds, and they love what they're doing. And it's you can sort of tell, I think. And I told them that, and they said, "Oh, I'm so glad you can tell, because we are." But you can get a lot of education from that. And if you look at this thing, you might think, "Oh, that's too many things I don't understand." But you literally just screw them together, and they're all in the same place, like all in the same Drip Depot website. Or if you go to a hardware store, you can get them all in the same, 12 feet. And then you just put them together. You do want to do them in this order. So this is actually a picture from Drip Depot. So they're just reminding you to do that. And if you think, ordinarily, like with a lawn sprinkler system with PVC pipe, you're not doing it straight off your tap. You have to have it like plumbed in and, have a control system or something. But this really comes off your tap. And if you want to maintain a regular garden hose off one side, you just get a splitter and put it right here. That's what I have. Some timers have 2 or 3 lines that can come out. On mine that I have onto my berry bed, I have this stuff, but then here I have it's a garden hose. It's like a chemical safe garden hose, and it runs around the corner and around another corner of my house and down the steps, and then, around the steps, so it's safe, and then over the blueberry bed. And so all of this is hose until it gets to my bed, and then I have the black tubing. So I guess what I want to say is it's probably the easiest craft I've ever done. Yeah, you can get supplies and support. Let's see. Do I have a Drip Depot? Let's see if it comes up. So look, here's Drip Depot, and they have all sorts of videos and how-tos, tutorials, and how to choose your kit and how to figure out how much you need and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. So you can use that whether or not you decide to buy from them. And that is also on the resource page.
Plus, they put a Tootsie Pop in every order.
Oh my gosh, they do. Yes. Oh, that's so sweet. Yes. How do I like soaker hose versus drip irrigation? Okay. I think I have an article from Grist about soaker hose, and I would look that up. Soaker hoses, I would check what they're made of. Some of them are still made of tires, and I would look at those articles. Look at the article because there are heavy metals in those and things like that. So I would be careful what my soaker hose is made out of. They do make them out of other things. Um, yeah, so you might take a look at that. Like PVC gives off BPA and a lot of stuff. If it's old tires, that's chemically not great.
So
Especially
some of
for
the drip tube only has the holes drilled in at about every 12 inches. So
yeah,
depending on what you're trying to water, you may want your water more than 12 inches, closer to
yeah.
12 inches. So I went with the soaker hose type of thing,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I've also used drip tape, which was a different type of deal. But the trouble with drip tape is mice chew it open to get to the water. But yeah, the drip deal with the emitter drilled holes in it just was not close enough for my use.
Did you ever get a? Did you ever see a 6 inch?
Excuse me?
Do you ever see 6 inch? You can get them at 6 inch
Oh,
distance.
I've not seen
Yeah,
that before. I bought some and it was 12 inches. I said, well, this is not going to work.
yeah,
I need it
yeah.
closer than that. But yeah, 6 inch
That's a
might
good
work. Or
point.
if it was 3 inches, or I could
Yeah,
potentially just drill your own holes in it. But they seem to have a little insert where they have the
yeah,
holes.
right.
So
They do. That's a pressure regulator. So if your bed goes like this, then it doesn't, you don't get more water when it goes down. So yeah, that's a good point. I tend to space closer and try to choose, 8 inch or I don't have any 6 inch, but I try to choose closer. Yeah, that's a good point. Where is the name of the article, Maria? It's on the resource page, so I'm going to show you that. And see this part right here where it says drip irrigate? If you click which material is safer, that's the article that I put in there, but you can see other articles as well. So there are soaker hoses that are made of different materials. Some of them are, I think, greenish or not black anyway. And some are black. I'm not going to say all the black ones are made of a material that you wouldn't want to use. I haven't looked at all those, but I would check out those materials. You're welcome, Maria. How about we save some water? We could think about it. Um, Kitsap County has some resources for us to learn about cisterns and rain barrels, but I learned more from Seattle. Uh, and look at this cistern right here. This is a slimline cistern that can hold a lot of water and doesn't take up a huge amount of space. And the Rainwise program is part of King County and Seattle Public Utilities trying to get people to catch water so that it doesn't get into the sewer systems when they have a really big rain. But you can still find contractors who know how to install cisterns. And in order to be in the Rainwise program, as I understand it, they need to know how to secure them for earthquakes. Because the fact that if you have something near your house that is taller than it is wide, if you have a wall, it does not care that that wall is made of 2x4s and hardy board. So you need to really secure it. And I talked to one of the contractors who does work in this area. And I have I have a link for him on the resource page. And he was very specific about what kind of reinforcement needs to be done. So I think that's great to have that combination of somebody who understands cistern systems and earthquake securing, right? But you might think, oh, don't have a very big roof, but you get so much more water than you could possibly store on your roof. So you can see here, 530 gallons will fill with 1 inch of rainfall. So that's pretty powerful. So what I've given you is some links. This is directly off of the resource page. but I've changed it a little bit. So let's see what it says on the resource page. So I have more stuff right here. So I want you to do your own diligence when choosing an installer, but I happen to have talked to Andrew from Regeneration Landscaping. It was a very satisfying and exciting talk. That's as far as we went, but I'm very pleased to know that his company exists and they definitely work on the peninsula. But if you would, I assume that you would like to talk to more than one cistern installer, and that is why I've given you the City of Seattle's list of cistern installers. And you can check with them to see if they work on this side. The reason I don't have people over here is even the founder of Bainbridge Prepares, who is named Scott James, as I said, he put in thousands and thousands of gallons, and it was a while ago, quite a while, a number of years ago, but he didn't find anybody at the time over here to help him with it. So he used a book that he recommends. So you can see that's in the list too, his favorite book on rainwater systems. So it's really an interesting idea. Another thing that a cistern does for you is if we do have an acute emergency, you have water for your garden stored, and you have, depending on how big your cisterns are, you have water for yourself, provided you have filters for it, and you have water for other people in your neighborhood whom you want to help. Does anybody have any information about cisterns? Like you already do this, or any other resources? Okay, let's see. While I'm here, oh, okay, that's just me. While I'm here, I'll show you that I also have information about compost. Local compost sources, it's changed a little bit. I think these are pre-COVID prices, so it's probably not that cheap. I mean, actually, I updated them last year now that I think of it. But do check compare prices. I use DTG. It used to be called Olympic Organics, but it's DTG now. When you go to their website, it seems like it's very industrial, but it's the same people. No, it's not. It's the same mix and product. They've just changed their website, and I think they were purchased. But it is the same bed mix, and Shelly at Bayhay definitely just said she thought it was really good. So it got her blessing as well. Should I quote Shelly? Probably not. If you'd like to read about resilience in general, Carol Deppy is a super cool lady who has a PhD in plant genetics or something and decided to become a subsistence grower instead. And she now breeds plants for the Northwest. You can get lots of kinds of plants that are specifically for us. And she talks in a really honest way. She's a Taoist. So, she puts some of that philosophy in there about production and self-reliance and what's important to her. So it's a pretty cool read. Steve Solomon started Territorial Seed, and he wrote Gardening West of the Cascades. And he wrote a book called Gardening When It Counts, which is also a mix of practical and philosophical. So I think that's kind of cool. Let's see what else we get. Okay. So before I tell you about this really cool fruit tree thing for next month, that is what I have to say about climate. Do you have any unanswered issues or things you think we might want to think about? Like I saw a webinar and they never covered irrigation, and someone said, I think we should talk about irrigation. So does anybody have anything else you want to say? Is there anything anything philosophically that you think about?
I still have questions about how to mulch when you are starting from seed in the garden so that it actually gets through it.
So I can't tell who's talking. Is this Laura?
It is.
Hi, Laura. I don't know why it's not showing me. Anyway, so you saw my beds, and I actually, when I'm starting from seed, I actually clear the mulch off of that, and then I let them get big, and then I put the mulch back around them. But
Gotcha.
is yours so much more mixed that you
Yeah, I got
you
stuff
need that
all over
mulched,
the
unmulched
place.
at all times? Is that how that works?
Well, I think I've been using plants as living mulch.
Yeah, we talked about that when I was there, right?
Right. And that some
Our
things
kind of
did
living
okay
mulch.
and some things they didn't do so great.
Do you think it's because they needed like leaf mulch, or do you think it's they just were out competed or something?
Well, I think you actually mentioned that some plants or some vegetables don't do so well in a mixed bed situation, that they need more of more specific conditions.
Hmm.
And I
Yes,
don't
some things just aren't good competitors.
know. Mhm.
Like asparagus is not a great competitor, and raspberries are supposedly not a great competitor. You might think they're doing well, but then you take the competition away and they just go nuts.
Ah,
So yeah, you're already using your plants as a living mulch because you have that sort of constant cover. But are you trying to get vegetables going in between?
well, I'm trying to get like a solid, like just nothing but vegetables in this our new bed that we planted full of new dirt, which is like really bad dirt, unfortunately.
Yeah, that big area that you have down
Yeah.
at the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about like mounding. So John, I was showing Carol, I've got some mounds for my pumpkins. And again, I read Laura Ingalls Wilder mound. And I don't I it looks cool.
But you said, was it Joanne said that you should mound them bigger, put more soil over them?
Ooh,
I thought that was in the chat. Did somebody say that?
I didn't
I
read that.
can't see it. Oh, okay. I thought someone said someone told you to do that. But I was saying maybe the mounds are drying out
Yes.
and
Mhm.
um do you put your hands in there? Can you tell if they're drying
Oh,
out?
they're super dry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
since, if the plants are already up, but they're not doing well, then you'd probably have to be pretty persistent to get them wet now that they're dry because really dry soil repels water for a long time.
Hmm.
So sometimes I have to leave the hose dripping on it, not on a super hot day because sometimes the water comes out hot, but um, I just have to leave the hose dripping and then like move it 4 inches and let it drip while I'm reading and then move it and then check and it's still dry. It's like trying to make you sad.
Right.
But once
Right.
you get it moist, like consistently, and that could be a little bit of a project, then you can mulch that
Right.
and the soil will continue as long as it's not bone dry. It
Mhm.
will continue to take in water when you water it. You could mulch them.
Yep, I think that's the key in that area is to give them a really good soak and then mulch them up.
When you do soak them, I would put your fingers in the soil all over the place because sometimes it'll be wet, like a half inch down, and they'll be dry below it. So you want to really
Okay,
feed the plant and really check if it's moist. Yeah,
gotcha.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know you're going to get those sugar pie pumpkins because they were already set when I was there, right?
They were, yeah.
Excited about that. Oh, it's Debbie. Okay, so Debbie says I wrapped my soaker hose around every mound. So yeah, I was thinking about that, Debbie, but I thought, gee, I don't think we should give her make her make a system for her pumpkins now. But that's an idea.
Right, right.
You can put your soaker hose around it and just like leave it for a while. Yeah, it's tough once your soil gets dry. Okay. Anything else? You got anything else? Thank you, Debbie C. We have a really cool fruit field trip coming up. Oops. I did it early before the plants got too big. Oh my gosh, yes. If they're big now, sorry. I'm interrupting the fruit field trip discussion, but yeah. Yeah, it's hard to get your soaker hose once the plants are bigger, huh? Okay. So anyway, we have a really cool field trip. It's to Darren Murphy's little orchard with tons of fruit in it. It's his backyard, so it's got chickens and fruit and vegetables. And he is an ardent grafter, and he is the head of Fruit Club for years and years. He's been the head of Fruit Club, and it's really cool to see it. And we'll probably get to taste stuff too. I'm not sure what's going in August, but he very sweetly tells us about his garden. Um, so far, he's done it 3 years running, but I don't know if he'll do it next year. So it might be good to get in on this one. There's a link that should be in the chat. Is it in the chat again, John? It's also on the resource page, I'm pretty sure. The fruit field trip. I bet it's going to be in there anyway. I bet you want to look, see, you want to spend 5 minutes watching me read through a page. Yeah. Okay, yeah, there's a link here in the resource page. See the many fruits you can fit in a small yard on the fruit tree field trip. It's free, it's open to everybody. You don't even have to live in the county if you want to come out and see this. But we would like you to sign up, please, and let us know that you're coming. So there is a link to a form. If the form for some reason doesn't work, I don't know why that would happen, then you can email me and let me know that it's not working. But there's a link in the chat right now and also on the resource page. Let's see. So at the end, and that's my email. Probably we don't want that in the video, but anyway, that's it. And it's in the chat. Oh, it says end. I want to emphasize that when it comes to this kind of long, slow emergency or acute, fast emergencies, having the kinds of networks where you meet other people can be powerful. You know that, I bet you already know that. But the fact that you go to Veg Club, you go to Fruit Club, or you hang out with your friends and you share ideas and materials and things like that is part of that. It's a huge part of that resilience. So good for you. And I hope to see you in person at the Fruit Tree Field Trip.